Madhuri Kommareddi here, and she wrote an article called Stop the Forced Return to the Office. And she currently works for a startup. She used to work in New York State government. And just based on the changes, particularly that have happened in her life before and going into the pandemic, I think she has a really interesting perspective on office work, working at home, dealing with commuting, and just the kind of different challenges of both kinds of environments, of actually going into the office and having your primary workspace be in your home. So Madhuri, could you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself, what you do? I want to hear a little bit about what you were doing before the pandemic as well. But no, just tell me, what do you do now and at work, and what do you do in your free time?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me on, Lindsay. Excited to talk about this. So I currently work at a fintech startup that is based in New York City, but is a remote first work environment. So I have colleagues around the country, which is really exciting. And we do have office space in Brooklyn, but it is not a requirement that any of us go in. So it's my first remote first work environment, which is exciting. And prior to this job, though, I had, in some ways, some traditional jobs, and in some ways, some really non-traditional jobs, but all required FaceTime, physical FaceTime. So I used to either go to an office 5 days a week, sometimes more than 5 days a week, or I would travel a fair amount. Particularly before COVID, in my last job, I used to travel from New York City to Albany at least once a week. I was often traveling the rest of New York State as well, as somebody who worked in New York State government. So I'd be flying to Buffalo and Rochester and going up to various parts of the Canadian border with New York. So it was on the road a lot, in cars and trains, on planes. And so it's been a major contrast from my at least kind of most immediate pre-COVID life to now the COVID, and now I don't know what we call our lives now,
Right.
but it's been a contrast.
So I guess I would like to start with what you focused on in the Daily News article that you wrote that had to do with stopping this or questioning this idea of, everybody just needs to go back to the office.
Yeah.
What inspired that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it was kind of inspired by this ongoing chorus from the elected officials in New York City, in New York State, of requiring folks to go back to the office or encouraging them to do so. But what was missing to me was the rationale as to why it made sense for individuals to go back to the office. Like, it would be one thing if the elected officials and businesses were talking about how it's good for collaboration, it's good for mental health. Like, there's a lot of benefits to kind of physical in-person work, informality, relationship building, mentoring. But that was not what any of these elected officials were saying. They were actually more focused on what the spillover effects would be of individuals returning to work, notably in downtown Manhattan or midtown Manhattan, or in places like Albany, where there's a large state government workforce. And to me, it kind of annoyed me a bit of, why are you trying to kind of push people back to work without an actual reason why, but instead just so they can kind of make these legacy businesses that built around offices survive. Maybe there's actually a different path forward that actually speaks to both workers and their lives, and speaks to a new economy we should be building. So I think that was part of it, was just the hollowness of what some of the elected officials were saying. And then two, just the notion that we were trying to go backwards as opposed to forwards. Like, the world has changed as a result of COVID. Some of it has obviously been really bad and awful. And some of it, I think, kind of points to something that could be good. And so why just kind of go back, like reflexively go back, especially for honestly, no reason. So that was kind of the inspiration for the piece.
And when you talk about legacy businesses, you mean like places where people get lunch when they're at work, like businesses that are around the office?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, definitely where people get lunch around the office, retail shops, maybe shipping stores, but kind of folks, maybe it's cobblers in certain, kind of shoe places in certain locations. And so just the notion of, oh, come back so you can spend your money at these places, versus like, I mean, like I spend more money now that I don't travel to Midtown every day or Albany or wherever. Like I spend a lot more money in my local neighborhood. Why is that a bad thing? Like why isn't that kind of encouraged?
Right. So it sounds like you're questioning, can we have more of a economic shift rather than say, we have to keep spending our money in the exact same way, keep living our lives in the exact same way just to support the structure that existed before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially there's I forgot there's something online. I think it was like a Tumblr account or something, probably dating myself, about a woman eats sad salad at desk. And so there was like
I
a
think I've
group
been
of,
that person.
yeah, like pictures of like just pictures of women like eating salads at desks. And like, how is that like we're going back to work for that? Like I don't think that made anybody happy.
I love it. The sad salad. So you were mentioning women eating the sad salads at desk, and that brings up another question I wanted to ask that just popped into my head when I read your article, and just thinking about these different work environments that we have as possibilities now. Uh, and I was wondering just about the workplace, the office,
Mhm.
just how much of that is, you could say, like built for men in particular.
Yeah, I've definitely, been that person that you're describing who has sat in chairs where my feet don't touch the floor, so I've had to buy footrests, or just at desks that proportionately, are kind of at these weird angles for me to actually type or look at a computer screen. As somebody who's 5'3", I often felt like work environments were not built for my size. And another thing that I think I've really noticed, and I think a lot of women in kind of professional workplaces have noticed, is temperature. That often it can be really cold for women in office buildings. And I've had many space heaters, which I know we're not supposed to have, but I think a lot of women do have. And I have shawls, blankets to keep me warm. There were times I've worn fingerless gloves at my desk to type and feel, like actually feel something in my hands. And so it does feel like a lot of workplaces have been built around men, which is interesting to think about. Even 9 to 5 schedules, presumably are legacies from one owner households and not really tied to school schedules. Um, and it's interesting to think that like so much of our workplaces are in some ways legacy male dominated workplaces that are physically uncomfortable, or just kind of create constraints on women and other caregivers, as men are increasingly caregivers. And so why are we returning to that is another great question.
Right. And but on the flip side of that,
Mhm.
in terms of working at home, uh, something that I definitely see is that people don't necessarily take the initiative to
Mhm.
set up their workspace in a way that is beneficial for them. It's definitely an opportunity to do that, that you might feel you kind of restricted in the office to whatever furniture they have or that they're willing to get at home. You might have a little more leeway. Can you speak on that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that also very much resonates with my personal experience, where I've been working from home for the most part for a year and a half, let's say, and I have not invested in a desk chair. I've actually asked you, I think I asked you probably a year and a half ago for a desk chair recommendation. I have still not purchased one because I think there's something about this mental, especially I think living in an apartment, in New York City apartment. I don't have a dedicated office room, of getting a desk chair. presumably I should accept reality and actually invest in things to make my 9 to 5 better, but I haven't developed that kind of muscle and urge yet. And so it's a great question about whether, physically I'm like set up for success here in a way that maybe I wouldn't initially be in the kind of traditional workplace, but adapted to and kind of
Mhm.
figured out that I have to make it work.
Right. And just anything else on that topic of, just at home versus at work? I know you were talking about you went into work yesterday. Um, was there anything you noticed when you went into work that was that, oh, this, I actually like this when I go into work, or oh, I'm glad I'm working at home because I prefer this at home?
Yeah, it's great that we're having this conversation today because it's very much top of mind, having gone in yesterday for the first time in a few months, really. I think a few things have come up. One, I definitely was far more physically active yesterday, not just kind of the commuting to work, taking the subway, but also really the like in the actual office space itself. The bathroom is much further away, getting coffee is much further away, water. So I got up more. I also had more informal conversations with the colleague that I saw in person yesterday. On Zoom, it's a little bit, kind of, or maybe we just have to make it less awkward to say, how are you? What's happening in life versus just getting right into the kind of issues.
Mhm.
And so that was a benefit, and just having more opportunities for resets, which you just physically have to, because you have to get up more, go further, you can kind of reset your body and your mind in a way that at home does feel like you're just kind of in Zoom mode all the time.
And did you get a salad yesterday?
I did get a salad. Thankfully, it wasn't a sad salad. It
Okay,
felt like an
good.
exciting salad. Maybe it was just different. I splurged on an expensive salad, which was delicious, but it was also really expensive. And so the notion that we used to have to spend money is a little bit crazy. So it was nice that it was a treat, but not an everyday thing.
Hmm. Yeah, great. I feel like we should call this piece the sad salad. Sad
Yes,
salad.
yes.
Yeah.
I'll find and send you that Tumblr. I read an article about it recently. I had no idea, I think, when it started, but I just read some article and it was really kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely send that. Okay, great. Well, it was really wonderful to hear your perspectives on, those two things, and it's really not one or the other, and
Yeah.
there are benefits to both. I think what I'm getting out of this conversation is there's just a lot to think about,
Yeah.
that having this sort of changes forced upon us, and I've definitely seen that in my life. It just kind of gets you to reevaluate what is standard, what is normal, and say, well, like, why are we doing this as opposed to this? And a lot of food for thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
Salad
I mean,
and
just absolutely, like, think about the why.
yeah.
That's kind of what I'm hoping that we think about more. We've had an opportunity to actually question what we do, so let's like use that opportunity.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Of course, thank you so much.